Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby, and you're now watching Snowfall Aftermath. And today we are here to review Snowfall Season 6, Episode 4, and the title of the episode is Projects Boy. And I am joined today by Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. How are you doing, Richard?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
What's up, indeed? And we are going to learn to cook today. We're gonna learn how to cook. We got to cook the product right. So, but yeah, very interesting episode today. A lot of moving parts. A lot of it seemed like the main characters were kind of the focus of this episode, as opposed to last week where it kind of focused on Leon and Wanda. But yeah, so we're gonna get right into our takeaways, in which we're gonna break down the episode and share our thoughts and our perspective on what we saw in this episode. And then later on, we're gonna have more of a back and forth discussion about some of the topics that have arisen after watching this episode. And also, we'll talk a bit about the trailer too. But before we do that, big reminder to the people, please do support the show. Leave your comments, let us know your thoughts and theories. Hit the like button also, that's very important. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified when the new video comes out. We do cover many other shows that you might like Power. Book 2 Ghost is coming back pretty soon. I believe it's the end of next week, so look out for that. The Powercast will be back. And also, we're currently covering BMF on the Entertainment Channel, and you can find the link to that in the description box below. So definitely go check that out. And Dana has been interviewing a lot of people on that cast as well. I watched the one where she interviews the I forgot her name, but it's the detective character. And if you've been watching BMF, some interesting things been happening on that show. So she questions her about what's happening on the show. So that was a very good interview by Dana. So shouts to her. But yeah, do take your time to check out some of the other content we have for you. But let's not delay any further. We're gonna get right into the takeaways for this episode of Snowfall. And this week, Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. is going to go first. So take it away, Rich.
Sounds good. So let me go ahead and start off by saying, once again, I thought this was a great episode of Snowfall that we saw last night. My takeaways basically consist of three main things I want to focus on, and I will also add a little tidbit in here as well. So let's go ahead and let's start off with Franklin, and how his storyline progresses in this particular episode. We do see at the beginning of the episode that Franklin is stressed out. Obviously, Veronique and Cassandra, they are trying to get some information as far as how to get his money back. And they do come across a guy that was pretty much the middleman that between all the stuff that happened with Teddy when he decided to move the money. I believe the guy's name is William. So they basically was going after him to start to investigate the paper trail and see if they can recover Franklin's money. Let me start off by saying, maybe it's just me, but I really like how they shot this particular scene, the setting, how they shot it, and everything, involving that whole process, like the whole camera shot of when the lady's opening the safe. All of that made me feel like this was taken directly from an episode of Better Call Saul, because that the guy is crooked, right? And he's doing some underhanded stuff. And of course, they're trying to do all they can to take his attention away so they can get the information they need. So I thought that was very well done. There was a little bit of tension, and eventually they did get some information. Now, obviously, the funny part is, after going through all of that, they meet up with Franklin. And obviously, Franklin is on edge. He's angry because he thought that by them working together this one time, he was going to get everything back. But obviously, Cassandra tells him this is the start of this entire process. She does tell him that there is a withdrawal that there is no record of, that they was unable to find. And of course, Franklin is angry. Now, once again, Damson Idris is an excellent actor. I like seeing when this character is angry and how he just throws around stuff and knocks stuff over. I thought that was pretty convincing that he's angry. So he is mad, but because of how he reacts, Cassandra is a little uneasy. So eventually, Veronique does talk her into this idea of going over, going out of the country to investigate this situation further. And that was their backup plan from the very beginning. But obviously, when she saw how Franklin reacted, she did not like that. And she basically was on edge about that. So I do anticipate moving forward. Now you're going to see her start to talk to Veronique again. They're going to have scenes where she's going to tell him, are you sure you want to go down this path? What is the alternative path if this doesn't work out? So stay tuned for that for sure. But continuing with what else happens with Franklin in this episode, he does meet up with Kane because he realizes that he's not selling enough product. So Franklin returns to the cookhouse, and basically he investigates how Kane is handling business on his end as far as his cookhouse and the people that are working there. Now, I thought this was an excellent callback to season 1 when Franklin learned how to cook. So I'm glad they put that in there again, just to try to give you a idea of where the character started to where the character is at now. Obviously, he has a suit now. He is a lot more different, and he's a lot more ruthless now with his mindset because, again, his money is at stake. His product is at stake. He's going to do whatever he needs to do to keep all that on track. So he does go to the cookhouse, has an interaction with Todd, which, again, Todd was one of the guys who basically was holding things down when Kane was in prison. I'm going to say when Kane was pretty much, after he got shot and he was in the hospital. He was trying to do all that he could do to keep things going afloat. And, of course, he did not like how Franklin addressed him. So Franklin took some time to fry some of his face, put his face on that stove. So now I believe Todd does know the meaning of getting cooked for real now. I thought that was very entertaining because I was wondering when we saw that in the preview, who is this guy that he is basically doing this to? So that was funny. But obviously, this is an issue here about not really thinking things through because, Gary, you made an excellent observation when we started covering the first 2 episodes of this season, is that Franklin, when he had that interaction with Big Deon, and he basically told him, yes, if you want to tell Jerome about the pricing, fine, tell it. He knew that Jerome was going to show up and intercept that deal and get involved with whatever Black Diamond and Dallas were doing. So in this situation here, Kane and Franklin should have had the oversight to know, well, we're in a war right now, so we don't want to do anything to really put ourselves in a bad position with anybody. And of course, they didn't think about that in regards to Todd because he got treated the way he did, and he did not like what Kane told him. He went up to go find Jerome and Louis and tell them, hey, I know where Kane is at. And so that's what happened later in the episode when they decided to do a drive-by, get out the car, and try to go in there and execute Franklin and Kane. So I kind of find it funny that Franklin was surprised, as well as Kane. This is the reaction that they would get because, again, they are in a war. They should know better that if you do certain stuff, there's going to be consequences for that. So I look forward to seeing what happens next week because what we do know in some previous episodes, Jerome and Louis had a feeling that Kane was working with Franklin. Now they definitely are going to have to work together. Obviously, not just business, but actually trying to take out the others. And I do feel at some point, Kane will get killed at some point. It's a question of, is he going to kill Jerome? Is Jerome going to kill him? Or is Franklin going to kill Kane after Kane succeeds in killing Jerome? There's so many different variables of how that can get sorted out. But I look forward to seeing what happens with that. But that's pretty much my takeaway for Franklin. The other 2 quick takeaways I want to mention for this episode, I'm gonna let's talk about Leon and Wanda in this episode. Obviously, now they are back in the projects. Leon is trying to spend a lot of his time influencing Einstein. This is the young kid that's good at math. He does all the counting with the money, the deal, so on and so forth. He's trying to encourage him to not give up on school and pursue going to college. And pretty much as this is going on at the same time, they have this other incident happening in the projects where Big Deon and his crew have been shooting out the lights, the playground lights, because they feel as though the environment needs to be darker for their dealers. They'll be better protected from stuff happening to them. So obviously, basically Leon has a disagreement with Deon about this. And they do end up having a fight at the end of this episode because Leon does have a guy come there and put up new lights. Deon shoots out those lights and they have their confrontation at the end. Now, you see the tension building from the minute that Leon came back because, Big Deon warned him, everything is cool with us as long as you don't get in my way. So obviously, these two characters, you saw that fight at the very end of this episode. I'm about 100% certain the next episode next week, if I was Leon, I would take Wanda and I would get far away from the projects because Big Deon is going to retaliate. I'm pretty sure he's going to have his gun this time. So I'm curious to see how they handle that storyline because there's no way he can stay there after beating up this guy. There's no way that that's going to go down. So we'll see what happens with that. But another point that I did want to mention is in regards to Wanda, she does feel very tempted because she's, again, in this environment with crack. She does go to stop by, Franklin's old house, has a little run-in with Sissy. Sissy almost shoots her. And Sissy basically tells her, you should go to the Edgewood shelter, try to help out others, take your mind away from all of the stuff that is happening in the actual community. Now, if I had to make a guess as to what's going to happen, we already know that this story is going to end in tragedy, obviously. I kind of feel like the Einstein character, that character is going to get killed. It's just everything about that. When I look at the character, that he has so much potential, he's so intelligent, and he's caught in the middle of this war now between Deon and Leon. I kind of feel like that character is going to get killed. Like it maybe if not next week, it's going to happen before this show is over. I just feel that for some reason. And then what I said in our previous recap, I do still think something's going to happen to Leon, and I think Wanda is going to get back on crack, unfortunately, because, again, they have to show you there really is no reason for Leon and Wanda to come back there. Obviously, we know they have good intentions of trying to turn the community around, but we already know this is not going to end positively for everybody. It's no way. There may be some characters that get away, but I just think whatever bad somebody has done, it's going to catch up to them. And I think that's the whole theme they want to talk about with this show, this particular season. So we'll see what happens. But I did enjoy what they did in this episode. It creates a lot more tension between Leon and Deon. And of course, Leon, at the end of the previous episode, he hadn't yet made a decision on which side he was going to go with. So I feel like now he's leaning more towards Franklin's side because Franklin also has beef with Big Deon. But we'll find out what happens, because again, there's a lot more to come in the weeks ahead. And the final takeaway I do have is about Teddy in this episode. Obviously, he has a conversation with Parissa. She wants to stay. He's suggesting to her, why don't you stay with me? So I can protect you. And because he is very concerned about Reuban, as he doesn't know a lot of information about Reuban yet. He knows that whoever is after him is involved with the Russians. So what he tells her is that, hey, I can shut down this operation, or we could run away together with Franklin's money. That's $73 million. Now, obviously, it's her idea that they should run away because he's not really on board with that. But obviously, things are going to get more desperate for that character moving forward. So I'll be curious to see what happens to him. What I also find interesting about that conversation with Parissa is when he asked her, well, if I run away, will you come with me? She says, ask me when it happens. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very reassuring to me. If I'm in some type of committed relationship or whatever they have together, I want a definitive yes or no. I don't want you to leave me in the dark with a question like that. So Teddy should think about that. But aside from that, we do see that, again, Gustavo was having his own issues. And you do see finally, because they have that one scene where Gustavo was leaving, and then he makes Teddy makes a comment to him about, yes, you got very good with combat, how to use certain weapons. And then Gustavo says, yeah, I learned all that from the CIA, basically to imply all the stuff they've been through together. But in that final scene, when Gustavo was leaving, you see they have that long camera shot of Teddy watching him closely, paying attention to him, and like he knows something is up with Gustavo. So obviously, Gustavo does end up going to a bar. He does go home first. And of course, his girl tells him, no, you got to get out of here. It's not safe for you to be here. So he goes to a bar. And of course, Reuban is at the bar, shows up, basically tells him, I know about all your issues with the DIA and the CIA. And now you have to worry about me. Now, I want to help you. I can help you. But you need to be willing to give up Teddy within 24 hours. I need a definitive answer. I want the warehouse. I want you to get Teddy and his boss in that warehouse so that we can arrest them. And again, he tells him, this needs to be, in 24 hours, this is when all this is going to come to a head. At the same token, Gustavo has a conversation with the DEA agent, Tony, in this episode. And he also tells him that they're going to raid that warehouse the next day. So obviously, the next episode, there's a lot that's about to pop off with that warehouse stuff because this is all leading to what's happening next. So Gustavo is under a lot of pressure, obviously. But at the very end of the episode, you do see that when Reuban is leaving, that now Teddy sees Reuban. So I kind of feel like at this point, they are slowly building this confrontation between Teddy and Reuban. They already had a bit of a confrontation last season, but it's more to that. So stay tuned for that. But overall, I thought this was a great episode. I mean, it makes me very excited to see what's going to happen next week because there's a lot of storylines coming to a head, a lot of tense moments and a lot of action and the retaliation of certain characters trying to get revenge. So I can't wait to see what happens next week. But an excellent episode this week, and we'll see where things go from here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I like that observation about the cinematography at the start with that whole, scene where they're trying to get the documents and all that. It did feel very Better Call Saul. So I definitely agree with you there. Like it did remind me of that. But yeah, excellent takeaways as usual. Rich always has great observations in these episodes. So pat yourself on the back there. And
Yes.
we're gonna definitely discuss all of that in more detail in a little bit. But let me get straight into my takeaways for this episode, and a lot of these are similar to yours, but I'll try to give a little bit of my own perspective on that if I can. But so as far as Franklin in this episode, I do like that he came off as very imposing, very unhinged, and we like to see that Franklin because it seems like a disaster waiting to happen. Like it seems like something crazy is always about to happen when he gets into this crazy state that he's in, and we see how impatient he is with the paperwork and stuff with that Cassandra brings him and Veronique. And he's very much like, you basically like, we did all this and you basically told me what I already know, so where's my money? Basically, like he wants it now. He doesn't want to wait any longer. So he's losing his patience, and I think him doing that might have swayed Veronique. It might have like made her look at him sideways a little bit because he was so, because of the way he spoke to her mother and everything. And we know that she respects her mother. And she even checks him on it later. She brings it up when they're talking together. She says, you should go easy on her. She's doing a lot for us and stuff like that. So yeah, he was definitely impatient in this episode. And then like you were saying, Rich, that same cocky arrogance that he has, showed up in this episode, that blind arrogance, because when he obviously he does the whole audit of the money and everything and the stash, and then he's like, they're not moving enough product, we're not making enough money because they're not moving enough product. And then he goes to see Kane, and then he tells Kane, look, let me go to the cookhouse and see what's going on because we can probably improve this. And then Kane trusts him to go ahead and do that. And we see what happens when he arrives at the cookhouse, And what I like about the scene is that, because often in the hood or in, in environments like that, where it's a lower tier economy, you do get looked at funny if you dress up. Like if you're wearing a suit, if you're wearing, a fancy shirt, if you look like a square, they are gonna roast you. They're gonna look at you funny, like you're too smart to be here or whatever. So they were judging him for wearing the suit and everything, but he showed them just how down and dirty he plays. And he even he fried the man's face. He cooked the man's face just because they weren't cooking the products right, and he didn't want to listen. So he showed that he can be very ruthless, even though he is, a man in a suit. He has reached a certain level of success, but he's still willing to go back and get down and dirty with these people if he has to. And he wants to set an example that, he's not to be played with just because he's wearing a suit. So I liked that about the scene. um, now, now he should have known. Like, this is where the blind arrogance comes in, because he should have been expecting some sort of retaliation, and that retaliation would either come from Kane, because Kane has trusted you to go into his cookhouse and improve things. He didn't ask you to rough up his people and fry the man's face and all that stuff. So Kane could have had a problem with that. And then also, you're like you said, Rich, they're in the middle of a war right now. So doing something like that is irresponsible, because if you give somebody a reason to be a traitor, then most likely they are going to backstab you, because they know who your enemies are, and they will go right to your enemy to set you up. So he has to be very careful about the things that he does. Like, I know he was trying to set an example and show that he isn't playing, but yeah, this blind arrogance kind of blocks him from thinking logically sometimes. Like, he doesn't see the consequences of his actions. So that's a big flaw in his character, and that could be the flaw in his character that's exploited throughout this season. So interesting observation there with Franklin. So, second takeaway, throughout this whole episode, we kind of see that Leon, he's trying to make improvements to the community and everything, and he wants to put the lights back on, but Deon has his reasons for keeping the lights out. And I like that they kind of highlighted that as well, the fact that the cops are coming down on them harder at the moment, and that the sentences are getting harsher for the drugs and everything, because that really was the case back then. Around that time frame, they were really starting to crack down on crack and crack dealers and everything like that, and they were giving them like big numbers if they got busted. So I like that they reference that, because that is true to the time. And yeah, obviously, Deon, he's not very happy when Leon does choose to get the lights fixed and everything, and he starts shooting down the lights, and then they get into an altercation. They have a fight and everything like that. Now, of course, like you mentioned, Rich, a lot of other things build up to this moment. We see Einstein in the he's counting the money and all that stuff, but he's also got dreams of getting back into education and learning, and furthering himself, bettering himself and everything. And we see Wanda, they make fun of Wanda, for being ran through and everything like that. So a lot led up to this altercation. They were, getting very tired of each other. And then I like that. I like that they showed that, two black men can have an altercation without there being guns and, somebody losing their life, because that is the way of the streets, where two people have a disagreement. There doesn't need to be any guns. There doesn't need to be any knives. Nobody needs to lose their life. Like, if it's that bad, you just use your fists. Like, you have a fist fight, and you squash the issue after that. You fight. You still have your life. So I do like that they had that scene. And I don't know how believable it is that Leon won that fight, because I would have picked Deon, in that altercation if I was a betting man. But for for storyline purposes, I think it's great that Leon came out of that fight the victor. And I think what's gonna happen is we might see a little shift here. Now, Einstein, I think, is going to be, he's likely going to side with Leon and the mission that Leon is on, because we see that he has an interest in doing better for himself. So I think, he is going to align himself with Leon, and I think that maybe for a time they will achieve something in bettering the community. I think they really are going to achieve something really good. But as we know that you know things don't always end well, so there has to be some sort of example set here that these drugs always ruin the community. So I do think that somebody is going to end up losing their life eventually. I don't know how exactly that is going to play out. We know that Deon probably is now very unhappy with Leon, so I don't know if he is going to be involved, but I do think that Leon is going he might end up, getting taken out in the season. That's a very real possibility. And one scenario I thought of, this is just a light prediction. This might not happen, but I feel like Einstein is going to, kind of be on the brink of getting into college and education and stuff like that. I feel like he's going to be getting ready to, make that transition to bettering himself. But then maybe Leon gets taken out or something, or something like crazy happens in the hood, like a gang war or something, and then he is forced to kind of get back into the street life to kind of maybe avenge Leon, or maybe he sees something disturbing happening in the neighborhood. Maybe even due to the drug war with Kane, maybe they come to the hood and start slapping people and hurting people and stuff like that, and he feels that he has to defend them, and maybe he ends up killing someone, out of pure anger and revenge, and then once you end up killing someone or catching a body or doing something like that, that changes you, and maybe he'll feel like it's his responsibility to stay in the hood and be that leader for the community and stuff, and maybe that will taint him until he's taking Dion's place, basically. So I feel like they might make an example out of this character, is what I think, showing that he has dreams. He definitely has the skills and the ability to elevate himself to a higher level. But I feel like, the peer pressure of the hood and the neighborhood, I think it's going to keep him locked in that bubble, and it's going to be very unfortunate to see it play out. And this is something that The Wire highlighted very, very well as well, where people were kind of trapped in that cycle and couldn't break out of it. So I think that could be the fate of Einstein. And I do think that Leon, he might end up getting taken out. But his memory will empower everyone in the community, and maybe certain people will take on his example and try to better themselves and make a better community. But I feel like, for it to make a huge impact, that character might have to get taken out in some way. So that's my small prediction there. Now, obviously, it could go a completely different way, but that's just my little prediction. Um, and my final takeaway is, you kind of touched on it already. Is Teddy, now that Teddy is kind of on to Reuben, I feel like we're really seeing the big fight take place here. The battle of the two minds here. Because Reuben, like, both these guys have the power to take each other out. Like, Reuben could very easily take out Teddy and expose him, and get him locked up for everything that he's done. And Teddy also has the resources, the skills, the talents to kind of take out Reuben as well. And we see that after Reuben was talking to Gustavo at the bar, Teddy sees that, and he's taking pictures and everything. And then in the trailer we see that he's still kind of looking into this guy and everything. So now that Teddy has a thread to kind of go off of, like, I definitely think this is where the real fight between these two starts. And Gustavo, he's likely to end up being collateral damage here. I don't know if Teddy is going to trust him anymore. I'm real interested to see what Gustavo's next move is going to be, because there was that one scene here in this episode where Gustavo, like Teddy and Gustavo were together and they're walking out of the warehouse or whatever, and then Gustavo gets in the car and drives away. But we see that Teddy's looking at him. He has a real intense kind of stare. So, like, I think he definitely doesn't trust him anymore, especially after seeing Reuban walk out of that bar. So yeah, it's going to get very interesting from here on. And I don't know if like, because in this episode we see something about Reuben's personal life. We see that he has a partner, and I'm wondering if maybe Teddy could do something like with that. He could end up torturing that person for information or something like that. So I'm wondering if something is going to happen with that character. And then also there's Parissa, who is, she was already kind of kidnapped by Reuban before. So, they could go after her again. She's at risk also. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. And of course, Franklin is the wild card in this, because we know that he's already kind of working with Reuban. Like, he has cooperated with him to a degree. So, Franklin, he could be the end to this altercation. He's the wild card in the situation. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, those are pretty much my takeaways for this episode. And yeah, I'm very interested to get into our discussion segment now, because now we get to unpack all of this, because there's some interesting details that we could, kind of discuss. But before we do that, another reminder, if you're enjoying the episode, please do leave your comments. Let us know what you think about all of these different, plot points and everything that we're kind of talking about. And then also, please do hit the like button. If you've listened this far and you haven't hit the like button yet, please do that, so that we can continue to bring you more content like this, so that we can continue to cover more shows and dedicate more of our time to doing these things. So definitely do that, and then subscribe to the channel also, and hit the bell icon. And we thank you all for your continued support. So let's get right into the discussions. So just going off of that last thing I was kind of talking about there, with Teddy and Reuban and everything. So with Gustavo, it was very funny, because he was at the bar, he was drinking, he was very happy and merry and everything, tipsy. And then as soon as he realized who Reuban was, like, he sobered up quick, like, immediately. And he was like, "Who are you?" And then, that whole thing happened. So he is in a very, like, we've talked about this before. And I know Inga pointed it out also, Gustavo is in a very tight spot right now. Like, he is in, he's like got the hardest position and the hardest decision to make in this show, who to be loyal to. So I want to ask you, Rich, who do you think Gustavo is going to choose? Is he going to cooperate with Reuban, or is he going to maybe think in his mind, I've come this far with Teddy, we've done a lot together, we've been through so much, so I'm going to stick with him, I'm going to trust him, I'm going to put my faith in him, and I'm going to go to, Teddy and tell him everything that's happened and be honest with him. Do you think we could see him do that? Possibly. What do you think?
Well, let me start by saying this is a very good question, because there's a lot of things that have happened to Gustavo throughout this season and prior, which can make him sway in different directions. Now, in regards to Teddy, he sees how Teddy treated Franklin and how he basically is in between this whole thing that happened with Franklin, Louis, and Jerome. He is the reason for all of this. So that Teddy he's out for himself. He doesn't really care about Franklin. And he also doesn't care about Gustavo. He's still out for himself. And when everything falls apart, he's going to look out for himself, not anyone else. So that makes you wonder, can he trust Teddy? As far as Tony, the DEA agent, is concerned, we did see in a previous episode, he was relying on them to get hospital records for his son, which he did get. But he was just mad that Tony wasn't the one that took care of that, and he had got one of his people to take care of it. So he kind of is uneasy about trusting him as well. But he does know that his family, their safety is at stake. So he's going to probably think about that decision a little bit more. And now this Reuban guy comes into the picture. He doesn't know a lot about Reuban. He just knows that he was at the wedding. And it's also interesting that this conversation happened because in the second episode of the season, you remember that Franklin had that conversation with Gustavo, says when he showed him the image of Reuban, and they had the whole deal say, yeah, you get me Teddy, then I'll get you everything you need to know about this guy. So now that this has happened, this kind of changes, I think, that whole dynamic between Franklin trying to have a bargaining chip with Gustavo, because Franklin does not know that this guy, Reuban, has spoken to Gustavo. So I'm very curious to see how the next interaction goes between Franklin and Gustavo. But to answer the question, this is tough. This is tough. The character is definitely under a lot of pressure. You have the CIA, the DEA, and the KGB to worry about. That's a hell of a lot of pressure on all sides. I kind of feel like he's going to still go with who he thinks is going to protect his family. And he probably will lean more towards, basically trying to work with Tony, who is the DEA agent. But the problem is both the DEA and the KGB, Reuban and Tony, they are expected to go to that warehouse the exact same day at the exact same time. So that's why I say next week, I can't wait to see how this goes down. I don't think that the DEA agent, some of his people will get killed. I think we can come to that conclusion now because there's going to be some casualties in this whole thing. We saw some of Reuban's people got killed in the previous episode when they went to go to Costa Rica and had all those issues. And you saw Reuban was very angry about that in this episode because he knew like something like that would happen. So if I had to make a guess as to what's going to happen, and I'm going to be very curious to hear what you say, as well as the commenters such as JB, Inga, and others. But if I had to make a guess, my guess is that he's going to be thinking about his family. So he's going to try to stick with what Tony, the DEA agent, is saying as far as being who he trusts. But I'm very curious to see what happens because, again, now that Teddy knows that Reuban has spoken to him, there's a lot of things I want to see what happens in the next episode, how those conversations go, because something definitely is going to happen in the next episode, and it will not be a good outcome for Gustavo, I feel, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly as you said, like the clock is ticking, and I feel like something major is going to happen from now, because now that Teddy knows that, Gustavo is in contact with this Reuban character, like he's not going to trust him no more. And the only thing that can save his relationship with Teddy now is if he like came to Teddy immediately and was like, look, I gotta tell you what's been going on. And he kind of confesses, everything. That's the only thing that can salvage that friendship, I think, at this point in time. Because the longer he doesn't say anything to Teddy, the more that Teddy is not going to trust him anymore. And if he doesn't trust him, then that means he's going to be part of the collateral damage of Teddy trying to get away from the DEA and KGB and stuff like that. So yeah, he's in a bad position. I feel like Gustavo is actually in danger of actually being killed off at this point. That could happen at any time now, I think. And he's a likable character, so hopefully that isn't the case, because he is a cool character. It's been cool to watch his progression throughout the show. But yeah, things are getting it's reaching a critical point for the character now. And they're talking about raiding the warehouse next week. And another thing I want to say about that is because Reuban is clearly aware of the DEA and what they're doing. So, I'm wondering if he planning to leverage what they're doing, or I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work, because obviously he has his own motives, and then the DEA, they have their own what they want to do. And I believe that was Reuben watching Gustavo talk to the DEA, talk to Tony in the car. And I don't know if it was last episode or the one before, but he has been watching and he has been paying attention. So I'm wondering if he plans to leverage what the DEA is doing in any way, because he is aware of them. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. But yeah, something has to happen next week, and this kind of leads into another question I have about Teddy. So now that Teddy, has this knowledge, and we've seen this character be very crafty, very cunning. He's very calculating. So, he's a CIA agent, and he knows what he's doing. He knows how to handle himself, and he knows how to protect himself. So now that he's aware of this, the KGB and Reuben and stuff, and we see that in the trailer, he's probably going to be following up a lot of leads. Do you think that Teddy is actually going to be prepared now for this raid, for this bust to happen, and maybe he's going to have a backup plan in place by the time they get ready to make a move on him? What do you think about that?
That's a very good question. I personally don't think that Teddy will be as prepared, because he has to worry about Franklin. The main thing is that he obviously wasn't intimidated by Franklin. He is concerned now, as we will talk about that trailer in a little while. He is concerned about Franklin now, I would say, because he thought that this whole situation was going to happen between Franklin, Louis, and Jerome, and that they would just tear each other apart as a result of that. So obviously, knowing that Franklin is taking this different approach, I think he should be concerned about Franklin. And I think in the next episode, something is going to happen to divert his attention away from what's happening and be worried about that. Because again, he doesn't have that under control. Maybe he's telling his boss, I have Franklin under control. I have all this stuff under control with this entire operation. But obviously that's not the case now. So pretty much everything that they have ever done is coming back on them now. This is the ending point of the show. So I kind of feel like he will not be prepared to deal with Reuban. But I am curious to see how they get to that point, because like you said, he still is a smart individual. He can do a lot of things if he needs to. I just want to make a comment though and say, and maybe the commenters can also leave a comment as well as your opinion. Are you, after watching this show and all that Teddy has done, are you actually rooting for Teddy to have a happy ending? Because I can tell you right now, hell no, I don't want this character to have a happy ending.
Yeah, for me, nah, not really. Like I do want to see his downfall, because he's been too dominant, throughout the whole show. I feel like, he's been in a position of power the whole time. And then, let's not forget, he took out a very likable character, Alton. He was a cool character. He did some things wrong in the past with, his relationship with Franklin and everything, but he was a reformed kind of man, and Teddy took him out, or did whatever he did. We didn't see a body, but he got rid of him. He got him out of here. So I feel like we need some payback for that. I feel like Teddy, we need to see his downfall this season. But when you have ties with the CIA, it's very easy to kind of get away with things, I guess. So he could, he could get away clean. We never know. But I definitely do want to see something bad happen to him in this season. I feel like it has to happen. And I feel like we have to see Franklin kind of, get over on him, at least once in some way. So, yeah, I'm not rooting for him at all. So that's my answer. I do want to hear what the people think though about Teddy.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I also want to hear what the people think. But we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot that's going to happen next week. It looks like, so we'll see where things go from here.
Indeed, indeed. So one more question before we get to the trailer. So we see what plays out between with Franklin and Kane in this episode. Obviously Franklin tries to improve the product situation and the cooking and everything, and then we see that Todd actually, he visits Kane. He's very upset about what Franklin did, with his face and everything, and then Kane, he has a conversation with Franklin later about that, and kind of lets him know, look, like, you can't just be doing whatever with my people. These people have had my back and everything like that. So he kind of tries to check him a little bit, but Franklin is also trying to assert his dominance and show that he is the man in charge. Like he kind of tries to give off that vibe, like, look, I'm the brains of this operation. I'm in charge. He kind of gives off that vibe. So the two of them, butt heads a little bit, but in the very next moment, shots come through the window. We see it's Louis and Jerome's people. They come to the house, guns blazing, trying to take out Kane. And then Franklin and Kane are forced to get into survival mode and kind of unite to kind of get to flee the scene and get out of there alive and everything. And they kind of look after each other in that moment, trying to help each other get escape from the house. So in that moment, they're kind of unified. So the question I have is, do you think after this little shootout, this little moment that they had, this moment of life or death, because they could have very easily lost their lives, does Kane now trust Franklin a little bit more after having a moment like that with him where their life was in question?
That's a good question. I kind of feel like Kane and Franklin are going to continue to butt heads because it's an ego thing and it's a control thing. You saw how, like you said, Franklin was trying to assert his dominance in that conversation, and Kane was right there barking back at him. So I kind of feel like they have to work together in order to be successful. But I do believe that, again, I look at Franklin, and I still don't think Franklin would kill Jerome. Maybe he would kill Louis because he doesn't like Louis, but I don't feel like he would kill Jerome. But I do feel like if Kane had killed Jerome, then he may kill Kane. And I do think that the Kane character is going to get taken out at some point in time because it just feels that way. His brother is dead, Kevin. This guy died a while ago, a couple seasons ago, way back. I kind of feel like they need to have a reunion at some point in time. So, and that will probably put an end to all of that. But it just feels like this is a bigger issue that they have to get to. Well, one thing I do want to say, though, and again, they did mention this briefly when they were talking. I like how they had Franklin have a connection with Kane over his treatment of how the fact that he was getting around. Because we do recall Franklin was shot in a previous season by Melanie, and he had that whole season where he had that cane. He was trying to get around. So they kind of bonded the characters together because they didn't really go into a lot of detail with Kane. Said, oh, yeah, it was a miracle that he survived. It's a miracle that he's able to still walk. But they kind of touched upon the fact when Franklin said, oh, I totally understand. I went through this myself with the treatment. So I'm glad that they put that in there because they needed to explain that a little bit more, how it goes from I might not walk again till now I'm walking and everything is fine in a short span of time. So I'm glad they put that in there. But to answer the question, I think they will work together to a certain extent, but I still feel Franklin is hesitant to actually kill Jerome. And the one thing I do know, when Todd had that conversation, they had that quick glimpse of Jerome's response, and you could see like a devilish grin on his face for a brief second. So that tells me that Jerome wants to kill Kane. He wants to take out Kane. We know Louis does, but I kind of feel like at the end of the day, Jerome is the one that will wanted to take him out. So I kind of feel like when it comes to that whole situation where they're in a shootout and they are at point blank range trying to take each other out, if Kane is successful in killing Jerome, Franklin will kill Kane. Because I kind of feel like Franklin is still hesitant to really kill Jerome. if he needs to. But if it was Louis, I think he would definitely kill Louis, no doubt about that. But it just feels to me like he will work with Kane to a certain extent until Kane does something that he disagrees with. And if it means killing his family, then he will turn the tables on Kane and take him out just like that. That's just my opinion, but I'm very curious to see where they go with the story for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I like that you said that because my theory is that what happened in this episode will be the reason that we're gonna see that funeral scene later on. Like I feel like I feel like after what happened here with them running up in Kane's hideout and shooting at him, I feel like he's going to get into total hothead mode and he is going to make some decisions to get somebody dealt with. And I think that might be what leads to that funeral scene. And if we we see in the trailer that Franklin is at that funeral, he attends that funeral. So I feel like if we're gonna assume that it's Jerome's funeral, then I think Franklin won't be too happy about the results of what happened, and that might lead to what you said with him trying to take out Kane. So, yeah.
That's a good theory. One thing that I do know for sure though, Kane will get his revenge on Buckley, the cop that shot him. So that character will get killed. Like if they aren't successful in taking out Jerome fully, they are going to take out Buckley. It's just a matter of time. And again, that's a character that I don't like either. So he can go as well. But I do feel that they're going to give Kane the moment to get his revenge on Buckley. But what happens after that is anybody's guess. But I still don't think the Kane character walks away from this season alive. Something's going to happen because there has to be a lot of casualties to really hit the point home that this is a war and everybody doesn't survive. So we'll see how they handle that.
Indeed. Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens there. But so let's get to talking about the trailer a little bit. So, just off of the back of what we were talking about, we see in the trailer that Louis it seems like she's getting a report of what happened. And she's like, oh wow, we could have ended this right here and took out both of them. She kind of has that moment, that sentiment. And then we get some real quick cuts. It's a real snappy trailer. We see Teddy doing some things. He's scoping out some people and he's having a telephone conversation. And then it cuts into Franklin also on the phone. And he's talking about his money again. He's and it sounds like he's threatening someone. Give me my money now, or I forgot the line about Rich. What was the final line he says again? I can't remember.
Wrong answer.
Wrong answer. There you go. And then we get like a real quick montage. We see Veronique as well, and to me it's looking like she might her water might break or something, or I don't know, something with her pregnancy. It looks like, because she has a real shocked and worried kind of expression there, and we see Cassandra with her as well. So yeah, very well edited and put together trailer there. And so are we going to assume that Franklin is talking to Teddy there in that conversation, talking about his money? Is that what you think is happening?
That is exactly what's happening. And I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer here, because they actually released a bit of a description of the next episode in that same video. Okay. 2 sentences, but very, very interesting information. So it is Franklin confronts Teddy's father.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that is probably who he is talking about, where he's threatening to do something to the father, and then if he doesn't get his money, and then Teddy tells him, no, I can't do that, and then he says wrong answer. So we do see that it looks like Franklin is setting a house afire. That possibly is who is involved in that, but we have to wait and see. And the other sentence is Leon solidifies control of the projects. So I want to see how that actually happens, because obviously we saw this fight in this episode. We didn't see Deon get summoned outside the projects after this, so they need to explain that for sure, because I'm thinking that Deon is going to seek revenge on Leon in the next episode. So I would like to see how they get to that point. But yeah, and maybe it's a situation where Deon goes away for a little bit and then he shows up again in the previous episode, and that's when he decides to take. I mean, it could be that too, but we have to wait and see how that comes together. But as for what you said about the trailer with Veronique, I do think something does happen with the baby, something to that effect, because of how she looks in the trailer. I can't tell for sure. It would make sense because she's under a lot of stress because of all the stuff going on with Franklin and her mom and her having to do all this other stuff. So that 100% makes sense for something like that to happen. But yeah, aside from that, like you said, we're expecting something to happen with that warehouse next week. And then, of course, Teddy is still on the edge as well. And we need to see how he deals with Gustavo. But yeah, those two things specifically in regards to Teddy's father and Leon getting control, those are very interesting plot points. So I want to see how they explore it for sure.
Yeah, I'm real curious about the Leon thing because we do know that Deon is actually working with Jerome and Louis to kind of move the product. So how does that affect that relationship if Leon kind of takes over, over the projects or whatever? So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. And yeah, the Teddy thing, that's crazy, if and I wonder how that is going to, like, what is going to lead up to that, because we know in the first episode, Franklin met with that dude, and he was trying to get information. What was his name? You got his name?
I think it's Top Notch. Top
Notch. Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
So we know he was meeting with him trying to get information on Peaches and Teddy's family. So I'm wondering if, does this dude come back to him with that information? And does he also tell him about Peaches at the same time? That's going to be interesting to see. And then
that's a good.
Yeah, and then also I'm just wondering what happens with Cassandra, like how their mission goes, because they're on a mission to figure out something about the money. So
exactly. And we do see Franklin is on a plane too. So I don't know if he also went over there. I mean, that's the way they edited it. The way they edit the trailer is very smart, obviously, because they tried to misdirect you into what's going to happen. But it's a lot of questions that they have to get answered. But I will say this whole thing with Teddy's father is very interesting, because I thought that Franklin was going to focus on Parissa. He did say he wanted to get access to, he wanted to reconfirm the locations of Teddy's father, his ex-wife, and his son. But he also said he wanted to go after any other pressure point that Teddy has. So that's why I thought that at some point he would get to Parissa. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But it is interesting to know, because I figured when they mentioned those characters, that meant that somebody was going to return. So Teddy's father, we'll see how that goes down next week. But it does look like Franklin is setting that house afire, unless that is Parissa's house that he's setting on fire, since Parissa is the one that said she wanted to stay behind. I mean, I have no idea, but we have to see how this all comes together, because again, they did a very good job editing the trailer to misdirect your attention as to what's happening.
Yeah, and they always do a great job with that, leaving us guessing with the trailers. Exactly. But yeah, is there anything else at all that you want to bring up about the trailer or the episode 4?
Oh no, I think we covered everything. I thought it was an excellent episode. It leaves me on the edge of my seats wondering what's going to happen next week. So normally when they do a very good job of that, it's for the best. So looking forward to seeing what happens next week. But overall, a great episode. And again, now we're at a point where we're only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only 6 episodes left, and then the season is over. So yeah, but I look forward to seeing what happens in these next 6 episodes for sure.
Definitely. I can't believe it's the final season, man. Like it's all gonna end in a few weeks. It's crazy. But that is going to be all for today. Definitely let us know what you guys think of what's going on. We're reaching a very critical time in the show where a lot of things are happening. So do share your thoughts. And, we thank everyone who supported Snowfall Aftermath and everyone who continues to comment. Big shouts to Inga also for, the comments last week. and everything like that. And yeah, so we will be back next week. So everyone, look after yourselves, take care of yourselves, have a great week, and we will see you next week for episode 5. Peace out.
Peace.